Today I'm continuing my series of beginner videos with a genuine beginner. This is my nephew Toby. He's 16.
I'm a genuine beginner.
He's very intelligent. He's kind of an absent-minded professor type, but he also didn't figure out how to turn on the stove till he was about 10. So you can see that beginner cooking applies here. So we're going to demonstrate how to brown ground beef for complete beginners. So here you go, Toby. Here's the ground beef. Unfortunately, it didn't quite defrost as fast as I thought it would. So we're going to demonstrate today how to cook slightly frozen ground beef. So you want to, I like to use a knife and just kind of slit down the package to remove the ground beef.
It's time for the ground beef ectomy. This is the boring part.
Sometimes I edit those parts out.
Now what do?
You remove the ground beef from the wrapper and put it in the skillet. I like to use a cast iron skillet, but really any skillet works. The cast iron is nice and heavy and has even heat distribution, so you have a little less problem with it burning. You can throw that away. And at this point, I usually like to wash the raw meat juices off my hands before I proceed.
I'm going to wash the raw meat juices off my hands before I proceed.
Alright, now we're going to turn the stove on to medium, the burner. Make sure you get the right burner. By right, I mean the correct burner. You have to push it in to turn it. Because this is slightly frozen, we may have to turn it down to medium-low and let it cook more slowly and defrost as it cooks. But we'll go ahead and start on medium as we would with normal ground beef, which is not frozen.
Okay.
So I recommend using the wooden implement, which I've provided here. You can also use a metal spatula. Don't use anything that's going to melt. So no plastic, no rubber spatulas, something wooden or metal.
Wood does not melt.
I also recommend not using something that's going to burn your hand. So if it is metal, preferably something that has a wooden or plastic handle. So at this point, because it's slightly frozen, go ahead and scrape all of the not frozen meat off the sides of the frozen chunk in the middle. And that will help it to defrost and cook faster.
It's one of those parts you edit out because it's so boring.
Yeah. Well,
I always like to give the meat a couple good stabbings to make sure it's good and dead.
I usually consider that part unnecessary, but I don't think it's harmful to the process.
Beginner tip. Beginner tip. It's kind of like the opposite of a pro tip.
It is, rather. It can help to flip it over as the bottom part starts to brown.
Ah. And then you scrape that part off.
Yep. You know what we could do? Because of this being frozen, you can turn it down to a medium-low at this point and put the lid on and let it cook for a few minutes.
And the lid went on the pan. Skillet. And the lid went on the skillet like moths to a flame.
Toby's been waiting to use that line. You can turn the heat back up at this point since you're actively stirring it. And by actively, I mean that you're standing there and not like actively like you're stirring it like you're running a marathon. You should also stir the non-frozen parts of the meat in the pan to make sure that they're not getting overcooked or burnt on the bottom. Ground beef doesn't really overcook easily, but it does dry out if it's cooked too long and will eventually burn.
It overcooks like moths to a flame.
Except not at all like that. Well, at this point, with most of the frozen parts gone and the meat starting to brown, this is a good time to add some salt. Usually salt is not measured. If you want to measure it, you could start with a 1/4 teaspoon and increase to taste. But I would normally just take a salt shaker like that and sprinkle it lightly across the top of the meat. Not quite that lightly. Give it about 3 or 4 good shakes. Yeah. And I would probably still want more salt than that, but that's a good minimum amount of salt. You can also add pepper. And I often add a little bit of garlic powder or onion powder, depending on what I'm making.
Warning! Always make sure that your condiment jars are completely full before starting to cook.
Thank you, Toby. We'll just use this.
We'll just use this.
Yeah. Convenient, yes. Okay, that's probably enough pepper for us.
That's enough pepper.
We like it kind of light on the pepper.
You like it kind of light on the pepper. You probably do too.
Alright, so at this point, we're cooking the beef on medium. Toby is stirring it, and he's breaking up the large chunks of meat into smaller chunks, which makes it more convenient if you're going to mix it into something else, or even if you're just going to eat it on a sandwich as a loose meat sandwich. It's just easier if you don't have large chunks of meat that you're trying to deal with. And at this point we know that it's not done. How do we know that it's not done, Toby?
Because it's not all brown.
It's okay to let it just sit for a minute or two at a time, but you do want to be mixing it frequently.
As you may notice, this meat is kind of brown, but there's still little pink spots, like here, 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 and here, and here. Just kind of like a pink overtone, like somebody uploaded it to Photoshop and added a pink soft light wash. Also, you might be able to notice that it's meat.
It is almost done. There is still a slight pink haze across the meat, or at least parts of it.
Pink haze draws across assorted pieces of the meat like moths to a flame.
This just doesn't even make sense.
Pro tip, don't fling little bits of ground beef across the kitchen. Here we have a completely cooked piece of meat. Notice how it's nice and brown. There's no trace of the pink hues that we saw on the other one. You may also notice that it's meat.
Alright, and I think that's completely done. So do you now feel confident in your meat browning skills?
I feel mediocrely proficient. After this cooking lesson, you can be mediocrely proficient too.
Thanks, Toby.
Patent pending.